Hi, welcome to the video where I pretend to remember anything about books that I read in the past month. I have the worst memory ever, but I'm going to try to talk about these books. I finished 7 books and I started 2 more in the month of April, and I am excited to see how much I remember about all of them. But I have a lot of books to talk about, so I'm just going to get right into it and try to keep this as concise as possible for you. The first book that I finished in the month of April was Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 4th book in the Mistborn series. It's Era 2, and I was I gave it 4 stars, first of all. I gave it 4 stars. But I was very scared of this book for a long time because it's described as like Western style fantasy or like flintlock fantasy. And I have never been a fan of anything Western. I'm not a Western kind of person. I don't like Western settings. I don't like guns as primary weapons. I don't like anything about it really. Like nothing about this appealed to me except for the fact that it's a Mistborn book. So it did take me a long time to want to pick this up. But as soon as I started reading it and we got into like the magic and stuff and like into the meat of the story, I remembered why I love Mistborn. I love the world. Like I said, I love the magic system. And that's the first thing that got to me is the magic system. I was like, oh yeah, I can do a Western if it involves this magic system because it's one of my favorite of all time. And I just really liked it. I ended up really enjoying this book. It wasn't a 5 star. Obviously, no Western will ever be a 5 star. But I should have known that if anyone could make me like a Western, it would be Brandon Sanderson. Like, come on. So I can't wait to continue on with this series. In this book, we're following Wax and Wayne. And Wax is he was like a lawkeeper in the Roughs, which is kind of like the Wild West kind of area. And because of things like family stuff, he had to move back into the city and take over and be the lord of his family's house. Before he knows it, he ends up getting entangled in some stuff going on in the city and starting to work with the constables. With the constables, I don't know if he's necessarily working with them or working as a vigilante, kind of doing their job for them is maybe more accurate. But yeah, so he ends up kind of falling into his ways of law keeping in the city. I don't know if it was because I had such low expectations for this book because of the whole Western gunfighting kind of thing, but I ended up really enjoying it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And yeah, like I said, 4 stars. If there's anyone that can make me like this kind of book, of course it's going to be Brandon Sanderson. The thing that I liked the least about this book was actually the name Waxilium. I was like, that is such a stupid name. I hate it. I hate it. And every time I heard it, I was like, I hate this name so much. Can we just call him Wax? But Waxilium. So yeah, that was my first book, and I'm already talking too much, so let's move on. The second book that I finished in April was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This I gave 3 stars. So in this book, we're following Lauren, who is, at the start of the book, a 15-year-old girl who lives in California. And this book is funny because I'm pretty sure it was published in 1993. Yeah, this book was originally published in 1993, and it's takes place in a futuristic America, but it actually begins in 2024. So I'm like, that's not very futuristic anymore. I always think that's so funny. Like any book that has that was written a long time ago and thinks like nowadays is futuristic, I'm like, oh man. But in this book, like I said, we're following Lauren. She lives in a community in California. And this book is a little bit terrifying because I've said before, I think I said it in a vlog or something. This book, it's like this world, it's this future where everything is horrendous and horrible, and there's walls around cul-de-sac neighborhoods, and like those are your people, and if you venture outside the wall you're probably going to get gunned down, and like people just want to steal your food and your supplies and stuff to survive. And I'm like, okay, yes, that's terrible, but it's also not that far of a jump from where we are now to this world. I mean, obviously this is a little bit fantastical in nature, but like we could get there. Like, I can see how we could get there. So it was a little scary. It was a little bit like a horror novel. But mostly we're following this girl, Lauren. I think I've said that 3 times now. And she's kind of tired of this life. She knows there has to be a better way. And throughout the book, she's kind of starting her own religion, which is this is the Earthseed. I think it was supposed to be a trilogy, but it ended up being a duology because I believe she passed. Octavia Butler passed away before she could write the third one. She's like creating this religion, and I think this is called like Earthseed is the name of the series, and that's the name of the religion as well. And so, I mean, we're just following her journey creating this religion. This book is really sad. It's really not like sad, like, oh, I'm crying, but just kind of depressing. But I enjoyed it. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars, but I do want to continue. I believe the next one is called Parable of the Talents. So yeah, I do want to see where it goes. But really, this was only 3 stars because it kind of made me depressed. And it's one of those books that the whole time I was reading it, I wasn't necessarily like enjoying it, but I liked it. So yeah, I don't know. That's all I have to say about that one, I guess. Next, I read Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. It's like I think it counts as a novella. It's under 200 pages. I gave this 3 stars, but it's like a high 3 stars. So in this book, you're following Sankofa, who is the adopted daughter of Death, as she is going around. She's chasing this thing that she got as a child. Her father gave her this thing, but then they had to sell it off. So she's just trying to find this thing again. People are scared of her. She's, again, the adopted daughter of Death. Everybody knows who she is wherever she goes. And yeah, I guess that's all I'll say because, again, it's very short. So the reason this was a 3.5 star book for me is because we got to the end, like right at the end, and we get some information and then it just ends. And I really wanted it to continue. Like, I needed more. I wanted more of this story. So maybe I'm just not a novella person, but like, I feel like that was my complaint with the last Nnedi Okorafor book I read too, is, well, that one almost felt more like a complete story. So I guess it wasn't really the same, but I still wanted that one to be more fleshed out. And that's what I wanted of this. I wanted more. I wish it was longer. I wish we got more detail into what happened at the end. Like, that almost felt like the beginning of the story. And maybe that's her point. I have no idea. I'm not like a critical reader like that. I don't know if that is the point of the story. But yeah, I wish there was more. I wanted more out of the end. Like, as soon as we got to the end, like even like 20 pages from the end, I was like, I need more of this. Like, how are we going to wrap all this up in 20 pages? And we didn't really. Like, as of the last couple pages of this book, we were still introducing new information that I wanted more of. So that's why it's a 3 star. There's nothing wrong with this book. I actually really enjoyed this book. I just wish I got more. So then I followed that up with a thriller, Stay Awake by Megan Golden. This I gave 4 stars. So I do a lot of complaining on this channel. Every time I read a thriller, basically. I'm tired of thrillers with unreliable narrators. And like that being the main plot device is the only reason the story works is because we have an unreliable narrator. This is no exception, but it worked for me here a little bit better, I think. So in this, we are following Liv Reese, who wakes up at the beginning of the book, and she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know what happened to her, but she woke up with a bloody knife wrapped in a t-shirt. And then the next thing she knows, there's all kinds of stuff on the news about a murder that happened, and she knows that she's involved somehow. So she wakes up with this bloody knife, and she notices on her hands are written the words "Stay Awake" across her knuckles. And the thing is, she doesn't only not know where she is right now, but she doesn't remember anything from the past 2 years of her life. So this book is just her trying to figure out what's going on, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I liked it. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's a thriller. I don't like knowing too much before I go into thrillers, so I'm not going to say too much about that, but It was good. I enjoyed it. I recommend it if you like thrillers and you haven't read it yet. The next thing I read was a little bit different for me. I don't read too many graphic novels, but I picked up Lore Olympus Volume 1, and this was 3 stars for me as well. I don't, like I just said, I don't read a lot of graphic novels, but obviously this one has been kind of everywhere. Everybody, I feel like, has read it. So I wanted to get in on the action, and I needed something short, honestly. I just needed something short to finish off my Magical Readathon TBR, or my Magical Readathon classes. So I read this. It was good. I feel like I was a little lost part of the, like, some of the times because it kind of jumped around a lot. But yeah, I enjoyed it. The art is not my favorite. The art is not great to me, but I liked it enough that I also have volume 2 here, so I plan on continuing, so that's good. But yeah, mostly it's 3 stars because the art is not my favorite and it jumped around a little bit and I was a little confused in some parts. But other than that, it was good. And it fulfilled a prompt that I needed to finish on the last day of the month, so. Okay, so next was another 4-star, and that was Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. So in this book, we're following Kelsey. Yeah, Kelsey, who is a 19-year-old princess. She's been hidden away since she was a baby because the queens of her kingdom tend to die. So in order to save her life and make it so she could live long enough to become queen, her mom sent her away to live in the woods with like a reclusive couple. And this book takes place where she is picked up and brought back to the kingdom to try to regain control. So, everything about that sounds like fantasy, right? Everything about that sounds like a fantasy novel. This book, this might be mild spoilers, so if you haven't read this and you don't want any spoilers, like maybe skip a couple minutes of me talking about this book. Once you see me put this book down, come back, but for the rest of me talking about this book, it might contain mild spoilers. From pretty early on in this book, I started realizing that this is not a fantasy world. They start making references to like New London, New Europe, back in America, and then they start referencing the Bible and like Lord of the Rings and electricity, but they're riding horses and fighting with swords. So I'm almost getting kind of like dystopian vibes from this, and I thought it was like straight fantasy. So I'm a little confused. I am very intrigued to see where the next book goes because there's some more stuff that they're talking about towards the end of the book that would probably definitely be a spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about that. But all that other stuff was pretty early on in the book, so it's not like super, like I said, it's not like a super spoiler. It's just kind of a mild one. But I'm so confused. I really thought this was just like a made up fantasy world, like completely fantasy. And then I started getting dystopian vibes and I was very confused. But I did enjoy it. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought. This was actually a 5-star prediction for me, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. But I mean, overall, I still had a really good time. I still intend to continue the series. And that's it. Okay, and then for the last book that I finished, and technically, I'll let you know, I kind of cheated on this. I finished this in May, but I read the majority of it in April, so I not only counted it for my Magical Readathon class, I am including it in my April wrap-up. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This ended up being a 3-star read for me, and several times throughout it, I was kind of like, do I want to finish this? But then I just kept pushing through because it was for one of my courses for Magical Readathon, so I didn't want to not finish it. But this book, we are following Lena and Aaron, and they work at the same office, like in the same company, and something happens on like the first couple of days when they meet, or like the first couple weeks after they meet, and she just decides that she absolutely hates him. And I thought this would be more enemies to lovers, but this is one of those books where you can tell how he feels right from the beginning. Like, there's really no question about how he feels about her. He doesn't hide it. He's not particularly antagonistic to her or anything. She's very antagonistic towards him. And what happens is she is going to Spain to go to her sister's wedding, but unfortunately her ex-boyfriend, her newly engaged ex-boyfriend, is going to be there, and he's the best man. And so she feels like she cannot go to this wedding alone. She has to go with someone, but time is running out. She doesn't have a boyfriend. So Aaron overhears this conversation and volunteers to step in and go with her. This book was just too long. It's a romance novel that is 430 something pages long. It was too long, and it's super repetitive. And like, as someone who tends to be very repetitive, like if I say it's too repetitive, it's definitely too repetitive. The fight they have is the same, even the words. And if I had to read his ocean eyes one more time, I don't know what I would have done. His ocean blue eyes, those blazing blue, like all the ways of describing blue eyes. I've read a book like this before, not like this, but what was it? The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. Is that a book that I read? Where she just like incessantly described the male main character's eye color in like all different shades of blue, and like his blue eyes, I get it, he has blue eyes. This was the same, only she just stuck with ocean. She just called them ocean eyes the entire book. Just little stuff like that drove me nuts and really took me out of the story and made it, my enjoyment level was way lower. I feel like people either love this book or just do not enjoy it at all. And unfortunately, I was more towards the not enjoying it. Like, if we had cut the first half of the book in half again, and it had only been like a 300-page book, I think it would have been good. But, and then the third act conflict. And then there's some stuff thrown in just for drama at the end. So, I mean, yeah, I gave it 3 stars, but it's kind of like a low 3-star, like a generous 3-star. I think it was better than 2-star, though. That's why I landed on 3-star. But it wasn't my favorite. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you like long, drawn out, repetitive books. I wish I had enjoyed this more, but I just didn't. So those are all the books I finished. I had 4 3-stars and 3 4-stars, so not too bad. Still on the hunt for a 5-star. I have yet to have a 5-star this year, and we are into the 5th month. So fingers crossed that this month will be the month. But other than that, I just have the 2 books that I was also reading in the month that I did not finish. The first one is The Standin by Lily Chu, and that I'm about halfway through. It's cute. The premise of that is we are following our main character, Gracie, and she is almost identical to a Chinese superstar named Feng Li. And Feng Li is getting very tired, and she's very overbooked and overworked and overwhelmed. And so one day she meets up with our main character. Is it Grace or is it Gracie? How am I halfway through the book and I still don't remember? But she meets up with our main character and says, hey, I will pay you a large sum of money to pretend to be me and take on some of my smaller public commitments. So Gracie needs money, so she's like, hey, all right, sounds good to me. And it goes from there. I'm enjoying that, and the only reason I haven't read more of it is just because I haven't been reading on my Kindle, and I have that on my Kindle, so there's no reason other than that I have not read more of it. Hopefully I'll finish it in May. And then the last book that I have to talk about, so I'm not done with it, but I've basically already read 2 books worth, like, of normal length. I'm 680 pages into A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. This is the 5th and, as of right now, final book in A Song of Ice and Fire. And yeah, like I said, I'm 680 pages in. I'm like 2/3 of the way through. And I like it. Nothing will ever beat A Storm of Swords. I feel like that's just known to be the best one of these books. But this one's not bad. I said when I was reading A Feast for Crows that my main complaint with that was that we weren't following any of the characters that I enjoyed, like any of my favorite characters from the series. And in this one, we get time with pretty much all of them. So that I like, but I mean, I guess I don't really have much else to say about this. I hate Ramsay Bolton. Does that count? I like that the story is progressing more. So the other thing that I had to say about A Feast for Crows was that it felt like we were just jumping around talking about like people's plans and we weren't actually getting any plot progression, whereas this one is a lot more, I feel like, based like plot stuff. This one is more moving the plot forward than the last one. So I do like that. But again, I'm not finished with it, so I will give you my final thoughts. Hopefully in May I finish this, and in my May wrap up I will give you my thoughts. All right, so these are all the books that I read in the month of April. Alloy of Law, Remote Control, Stay Awake, Lore Olympus, and The Spanish Love Deception were all for Magical Readathon. So I did complete my Magical Readathon TBR. No, I switched one out. This was originally one of the books that I had for Magical Readathon. I did not get to this, so I ended up switching it out for Lore Olympus. That's why I say I finished my Magical Readathon courses, even though if you watch my TBR video, one of the books doesn't match up. That's all the books that I read in the month of April. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts on them were, and let me know what your favorite book that you read in April was, and also if you participated in Magical Readathon, if you passed all your classes. And yeah, that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!